Sister is getting married to my ex and parents demand I attend because they don't want anyone questioning my absence, so I attend happily and tell everyone the truth. Hi. I, 30F, have a bit of an issue and I don't quite know if I'm in the wrong here. I've read a lot of the posts on here and today is the first time I find myself turning to strangers on the internet to help me out, but that's truly how desperate I am for an objective opinion. This one involves my ex-boyfriend, my sister, and my parents. I know, none of that sounds like it'll go someplace nice, and you would be right to assume that. Let me start off by telling you about my previous relationship. When I first met my ex-boyfriend, Jake, 32M, I thought he was the love of my life. He was charming, funny, and supportive, or so I thought. We dated for 3 years, and for most of that time, I believed he was as invested in our relationship as I was. But looking back, there were red flags I ignored. He was secretive with his phone. Whenever I'd try to talk to him about how weird that was, he'd say that it was just work stuff. He'd also disappear for hours without explanation and had a knack for making me feel guilty when I brought it up. I chalked it up to my insecurities. After all, Jake always knew the right words to make me feel special when I doubted him. Things started unraveling during a family barbecue my parents hosted. My younger sister, Mia, 27F, insisted I come because it had been a while since I attended a family gathering. She said it would mean a lot to her, so I reluctantly agreed. At one point, I realized Jake had been gone for a while. As I wandered through the house looking for him, I stumbled into the guest room, and there they were. Jake and Mia. Together. It was like the floor had fallen out from under me. My mind went blank as they scrambled to explain themselves. Jake stammered something about how he and Mia had connected and couldn't fight their feelings anymore. Mia said they didn't mean to hurt me but that they were soulmates. Soulmates. That's the word they used to justify the months of deceit. I felt sick to my stomach. I stormed out and drove home in tears. It was honestly a miracle I didn't get into an accident because I could barely see anything in front of me through my tears. But what hurt even more was my family's reaction when I told them. My parents brushed it off as young love. They said that these things happen and Jake and Mia just fell for each other. They acted like my heartbreak was a minor inconvenience compared to the blossoming love story between Jake and Mia. I went no contact with Jake and Mia and distanced myself from my family. Over the years, I built my life back up, piece by piece. I focused on my career, made new friends, and found happiness again. Then, out of nowhere, I received an invitation to Jake and Mia's wedding. It felt like a slap in the face. At first, I planned to skip it. There was no way I was going to sit there and watch them pledge their eternal love after what they did to me. But my parents had other ideas. They called, texted, and even showed up at my apartment unannounced and begged me to attend. They claimed my absence would cause gossip and make the family look bad. They said it was time to let go of the past and take the high road. At one point, my mom sat me down and said, "We're not asking you to forgive them, but we're asking you to be the bigger person. Family is more important than holding on to grudges." I will admit that got to me. I barely spoke to my parents, but I didn't want to cut them off entirely. I realized that moving on meant being able to show that I had healed. I didn't see why I had to make people think that I was bitter when I really wasn't. I figured I could continue keeping my family at a distance, but that didn't mean that I needed to make myself look weak. So I told my parents that I would go to Mia's wedding. That decision should have been the end of it, but then Mia started spamming me with texts. Most of them were gloating messages about how she won or how Jake had always preferred her. At first, I ignored them, but then a particular set of messages caught my attention. Mia, likely drunk texting, complained about how much pressure Jake's parents were putting on them to prove their worth if they wanted to inherit the family fortune. She bragged about how their wedding was going to seal the deal and ensure they'd stay in Jake's parents' good graces. Suddenly, everything clicked. Jake and Mia weren't just building a life together, they were banking on his inheritance. Knowing this made me see their wedding in a different light. I wasn't just some bitter ex who'd been betrayed, I was someone who had the power to expose their hypocrisy. But I didn't want to act out of spite. I wanted closure, not revenge. When I arrived at the wedding, I'll admit, part of me wanted to turn around and leave. The decorations were beautiful, and everyone looked so happy, but it all felt so fake to me. I found my seat and kept my head down, planning to just get through the day. But then my parents came up to me and asked me to give a speech. They said it would mean a lot to Mia if I showed my support in front of everyone. I wanted to refuse because that was far too humiliating for me to do. But my mom did not stop begging me and my dad started talking to me in his irritated tone, which made me crumble pretty quick. I knew that they just wanted me to play along so the family's reputation would remain intact, but I hated that they wanted that, knowing that I was humiliated by the very couple that they wanted me to praise. I once again agreed out of obligation and guilt. As I stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, I felt so angry and hurt. Just as I was going to give a very generic and monotonous speech, a surprising sense of clarity washed over me. I started my speech by talking about love and how it can come from unexpected places. I mentioned the importance of honesty and trust in a relationship. Then, I pivoted to my own story. I told everyone how I had once been in a relationship with Jake, how I had believed he was my future, and how that future was stolen from me by someone I thought I could trust. I described the moment I found out about Jake and Mia and the pain it caused me. But I didn't stop there. I said that while their betrayal had broken me, it also taught me valuable lessons about resilience and self-respect. I spoke directly to Jake's parents, thanking them for their kindness during the time I had been with Jake. I mentioned how much I appreciated their support back then and how I hoped they knew the full truth about the choices Jake and Mia had made. I never raised my voice or sounded angry. I kept my tone calm and measured, letting the truth speak for itself. When I finished, there was a stunned silence in the room. Jake's parents looked furious. They walked out almost immediately, and I knew that my words had struck a nerve. The rest of the wedding was a blur of chaos. Mia came up to me, screaming about how I had ruined her big day. Jake tried to pull her away, but she wouldn't stop yelling. My parents were mortified, but I didn't care. I had said what I needed to say, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of closure. Later, I found out from a mutual acquaintance that Jake's parents were thinking about disinheriting him after my speech. They said they couldn't support someone who had acted so dishonorably. Mia and Jake's perfect future might just be gone in an instant, and they're blaming me for it. Mia's texts came flooding in soon after, accusing me of ruining her life. She called me selfish, petty, and vindictive. But I didn't respond. I had no regrets about what I had done. The truth needed to come out, and if it caused problems for them, that was their own fault. But, it's been a week and Mia has not stopped messaging me about how horrible of a person I am. It's starting to get to me, so I'm wondering, Ida for ruining my sister's wedding by exposing her relationship? Update 1. Hi guys. This post got so much more attention than I was expecting, but thank you to everyone who responded and gave me new perspectives to approach this situation from. But I feel like I need to clarify why exactly I agreed to go to the wedding when I could have just avoided the whole thing and cut off contact with my family for even thinking about suggesting that to me. When I decided to go to the wedding, I did it because I wanted to show my family that I wasn't the bitter, vengeful person they seemed to think I was. I went because I wanted closure, and maybe, on some level, I also wanted to prove to myself that I was stronger than the pain they had caused me. But deep down, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a part of me that wanted to make a statement. They had humiliated me, and I felt like no one had ever truly understood how much it hurt to be betrayed by both Jake and Mia, two people I had trusted the most. Looking back, I can admit that my speech was petty. It wasn't just about telling the truth, it was about making sure that Jake and Mia felt the sting of what they had done to me. But I don't feel sorry for it. When I was hurting, no one stood up for me. No one told Jake and Mia they were wrong. My family swept it under the rug, and Jake's parents, while kind to me during our relationship, never intervened to hold him accountable. So no, I don't regret what I said. For once, I got to tell my side of the story. After the wedding, the fallout was immediate. Jake's parents were furious. From what I've gathered through mutual acquaintances, they had always prided themselves on being a respectable family. When they heard how Jake and Mia's relationship started, they felt deeply embarrassed. Jake's mom was especially angry. She believed Jake had lied to her about the timeline of his relationship with Mia and me. They couldn't even consider the idea of leaving their inheritance to someone who, in their eyes, lacked morals and integrity. It wasn't just about my speech, it was about Jake's pattern of dishonesty and the disgrace he'd brought to their family name. So they cut him and Mia off completely. I found out about Jake and Mia's financial troubles a few weeks later. One of our mutual friends reached out to me to share the gossip. Apparently, without Jake's parents' financial support, they were struggling to pay for the lavish lifestyle they'd been planning. The wedding alone had been a massive expense, and they'd been counting on the inheritance to cover it. Now, with no financial safety net, they were scrambling. Mia, in particular, was devastated. She'd always dreamed of living a cushy, comfortable life, and now she was stuck trying to figure out how to manage their mounting debts. Then came the messages from Mia. At first, they were angry and accusatory. She blamed me entirely for their situation, saying I had destroyed their future and turned Jake's parents against them. She told me I was selfish and vindictive, that I had ruined her happiness out of spite. But then her tone shifted. She started demanding that I apologize publicly to Jake's parents. She wanted me to tell them I had exaggerated the situation and misrepresented their relationship in my speech. Mia even suggested I should beg Jake's parents to reconsider their decision to cut them off. Her demands were outrageous. She wanted me to humiliate myself again just to fix a situation she and Jake had created. It was almost laughable. After everything they'd done, after the betrayal and the pain they caused me, she had the audacity to ask me to clean up their mess. I refused outright. I told her I wasn't responsible for their choices or their consequences. If Jake's parents had decided to cut them off, it wasn't because of my speech, it was because of their own actions. They had built their relationship on lies and betrayal, and now they were facing the fallout of those decisions. It wasn't my job to save them. I didn't respond to any more of Mia's messages after that. I blocked her and moved on. For years, I'd carried the weight of what they'd done to me, but now it felt like I had finally let it go. Their struggles were their own, and I had no interest in getting involved. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. It's been a week since I blocked Mia and honestly, it feels great. Nobody else has reached out to me since, and hopefully, I'm not jinxing it by saying this. Anyway, I have a lot more in life to focus on than some petty drama, so I'm going to try my best to stay out of this. If I get dragged into this, I'll make sure to update you guys. Until then, adios. Update 2, okay. I jinxed it in my last update. I know, rookie mistake. But it's been a few weeks since I last updated and enough has happened for me to give you guys an update, so here goes. After blocking Mia and deciding to move on, I thought the drama was behind me. But, of course, my family couldn't leave it alone. A week and a half after I ignored Mia's demands, my parents reached out and insisted that we all sit down to fix things. According to them, my speech had created an unnecessary rift in the family, and it was up to me to make things right. They were upset that Mia and Jake were struggling and felt I should take responsibility for what they saw as my part in their difficulties. It eventually got so bad that I decided to set things straight once and for all by meeting with them. I decided to meet them at our local cafe. During the meeting, my parents painted me as petty and vindictive. They accused me of holding on to grudges and said my speech at the wedding was uncalled for. They kept saying I needed to be the bigger person and show some maturity. They reminded me that family comes first and that Mia was my sister, no matter what had happened in the past. To them, my actions weren't just about hurting Jake and Mia, they claimed I had embarrassed the entire family. They insisted I reach out to Jake's parents and apologize for escalating things, which they believed might help smooth things over for Mia and Jake. Their arguments didn't surprise me, but they still stung. They kept glossing over what Jake and Mia had done to me. They acted like I should just forget about it because time heals all wounds. They never once acknowledged how much pain I had gone through because of their betrayal. Instead, they focused on how my actions had made things worse for Mia. It was all about Mia's future, Mia's happiness, and Mia's relationship. Once again, I felt like my feelings didn't matter. Since no one was standing up for me or actually even thinking about me, I knew I had to stand my own ground. And that's exactly what I did. I stood my ground. I told them that I wasn't going to apologize for telling the truth. I reminded them that Mia and Jake's relationship began with betrayal, and if they were facing consequences now, it wasn't my fault. I pointed out how they had never held Mia accountable for what she did to me and how they had always expected me to be the one to make peace. I told them that I was done being the one to clean up everyone else's messes. If Mia and Jake were struggling, it was on them to figure it out, not me. My parents tried to reason with me and said that Mia, Jake, and I were young and that these things happen at that age, but I wasn't having any of it. I got so frustrated with them at some point that I got up and stormed out of the cafe. I turned my phone off as well because I didn't want to hear anything more from them. But even though I was so sure about my stance, I started feeling guilty. I mean, I know I did nothing wrong here. A lot of you pointed that out and a lot of you also told me I needed to stop getting guilted into things, and trust me, I'm working on it. But, I don't know what happened that day. My parents' words kept echoing in my mind. They made me feel like I was being heartless, like maybe I'd gone too far with my speech. I started wondering if there was more to the story with Jake's parents. Had my speech really been the reason they disinherited Jake, or was there something else I didn't know about? The curiosity and guilt got the better of me, so I decided to reach out to Jake's parents. I wanted to hear their side of the story directly. When I contacted them, Jake's parents were surprisingly open to talking to me. They said they had been upset with Jake long before the wedding but hadn't acted on it until my speech gave them clarity. They explained that Jake had lied to them about several things during our relationship. For example, he had exaggerated his career achievements and pretended he was financially stable when he was actually relying on them for support. They had been suspicious of his behavior for a while but didn't want to confront him without solid proof. My speech at the wedding was the tipping point. It confirmed what they had been suspecting all along, that Jake was dishonest and manipulative. They told me they had been particularly disappointed by how Jake and Mia's relationship started, as it showed a complete lack of integrity. Jake's mom said they felt betrayed because they had trusted him to be better than that. My speech didn't make them cut Jake off, it simply validated the concerns they already had. They made it clear that their decision was based on years of observing Jake's behavior, not just the revelations at the wedding. They also expressed gratitude for my honesty. They said they admired how I handled myself at the wedding, even though it must have been a difficult situation for me. Hearing that felt like a weight off my shoulders. For so long, I had felt like no one understood how much Jake and Mia's betrayal had hurt me. Knowing that Jake's parents saw the truth and appreciated my perspective made me feel validated in a way my own family never had. After that conversation, I felt more at peace. I realized that my speech wasn't the root cause of Jake and Mia's problems. Their struggles were the result of their own choices and actions, not mine. I've carried so much guilt over the years, but now I see that I've done nothing wrong by standing up for myself. If anything, I gave Jake's parents the clarity they needed to make a decision they'd been avoiding for far too long. My family, of course, didn't see it that way. They continued to push me to reconcile with Mia, but I've stopped letting their opinions affect me. I've spent enough time feeling guilty for things that aren't my fault. Jake and Mia's situation is theirs to deal with, and I have no intention of getting involved anymore. For once, I'm putting myself first. That's really it for this update. I've blocked my parents everywhere as well, and I think I'm going full no contact with them until, well, I don't know. I don't want to think about that either. Right now, I'm just going to focus on myself and moving forward. If anything happens, I'll be sure to come here and update you guys. Thank you for all the advice and love. You have no idea how much it means to me. Update 3, once a cheater, always a cheater. That's a lesson I learned the hard way, and it's one I'll never forget. It's been 4 months since my last update, and for 3 of those months, things had been blissfully quiet. Mia and my parents stopped reaching out. They finally accepted that I wasn't going to play peacemaker or fix the mess Mia and Jake had made of their lives. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt at peace. I wasn't consumed by guilt or anger, and I was finally able to focus on myself and my happiness. But, of course, nothing stays peaceful forever. At the start of this month, I received a text from an unknown number. It didn't take long to figure out it was Mia. She wasted no time informing me that she had annulled her marriage to Jake. She said she couldn't do it anymore and felt I deserved to know. I didn't respond. I'd already made it clear that I didn't want her in my life, and I wasn't about to reopen that door. But Mia wasn't done. Over the next few days, she sent a barrage of texts, gradually revealing what had led to her decision to leave Jake. According to Mia, the financial struggles they'd faced after Jake was cut off had taken a huge toll on their marriage. Jake, who had always relied on his parents' money, couldn't handle the pressure of living on a tight budget. Instead of working through their issues, he turned to cheating. And not just with one woman. Mia claimed she discovered he'd been unfaithful with multiple women, including 2 of her bridesmaids. Without me asking, I never responded, but I guess she knew I was reading the texts because my read receipts are turned on. Mia explained how she found out. She said she'd started noticing Jake's behavior becoming more erratic. He was staying out late, coming up with flimsy excuses for his absences, and being secretive with his phone. At first, she brushed it off, because she thought that it was just the stress getting to him. But one night, she received a message from one of her bridesmaids, who confessed to having a brief fling with Jake. The bridesmaid claimed she hadn't known how to tell Mia but felt guilty about keeping it a secret. That confession opened the floodgates. Mia confronted Jake, who initially denied everything but eventually admitted to cheating, not just with the bridesmaid who came clean but with another bridesmaid and a few other women as well. As I read Mia's texts, I felt so many things. Part of me felt vindicated. Jake had finally shown Mia his true colors, and she was experiencing the same betrayal I had endured years ago. It felt like karma had come full circle. At the same time, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity for her. I knew how devastating it was to be cheated on, to have the person you trusted most completely shatter your world. But that pity didn't last long. Mia might have been betrayed by Jake, but she had betrayed me first. She had made her choices, and now she was dealing with the consequences. Mia didn't stop at just explaining what happened. She started asking me for advice. She said she didn't know how to cope with the betrayal and wanted to know how I had managed to move on after Jake cheated on me. She kept trying to connect with me, saying we had both been hurt by the same man and that we should support each other. But what struck me most was what she didn't say. Not once in all her messages did she apologize for what she had done to me. She never acknowledged the pain she had caused me by betraying me with Jake. Instead, she acted like we were in the same boat, as if her suffering somehow erased the past. I didn't respond to any of her messages. I'd already given her more of my time and energy than she deserved. After a few days of nonstop texts, I blocked her again. I felt no guilt this time. If anything, I felt relieved. Relieved that I didn't have to deal with her anymore, and relieved that karma had finally come around. Jake had shown Mia exactly who he was, and she had no one to blame but herself for ignoring all the red flags. As far as I'm concerned, she's reaping what she sowed. Looking back, I have no regrets about how I handled the situation at the wedding or in the months that followed. Telling the truth wasn't petty, it was necessary. Jake and Mia's relationship was built on lies and betrayal, and it was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. I've spent too much of my life trying to please people who don't deserve my kindness, and I'm done with that. For the first time in years, I'm focusing on myself and my happiness, and it feels amazing. I've learned that sometimes, the best thing you can do is walk away and let karma take care of the rest. So that's it from me. I'm finally going to move on and put all of this behind me. It's sad that I've lost my family in all of this, but I've been thinking about it and I think that it's time that I go to therapy. I need to get all of this properly sorted out because I feel like there's a lot of emotions that I'm avoiding dealing with right now. Also, I'm seriously so grateful to every single one of you who replied and even privately messaged me to check in on me. You guys were the best, and honestly, you made this whole experience a lot easier to deal with. Alright then. Bye bye.